So NS Vishwanathan, the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, in a speech earlier today in Pune, pointed out the need for the February 12th guidelines on NPA management to be implemented in the way that they have been perceived by the Reserve Bank of India. This speech by an RBI Deputy Governor comes on the back of a lot of debate on whether the February 12th guidelines are very stringent or too stringent for the banks, and whether there is a need to dilute some of these norms. So much so that this debate has now reached the government, and a parliamentary committee will be talking to the Reserve Bank governor, trying to get him to agree to dilute these norms. But the Reserve Bank is pretty steadfast in its approach, and let's hear what NS Vishwanathan has to say about this matter. The reason why he wants these guidelines to be implemented in the form that they have been intended is because he feels that the debt contract that is embedded in, especially in some of these larger loan cases, the sanctity of them is continuously on a decline, and that is something that needs to change, according to the Reserve Bank of India Deputy Governor. He points out that unless this changes, there is a chance that bank debt may become subordinate to even equity in the scheme of things. So that is primarily the reason why the Reserve Bank wants these guidelines to be as tough as they are currently. But what is exactly the problem with the sanctity of debt? Well, that is explained in this quote, wherein Vishwanathan asked the bankers to be a little more proactive when they are dealing with stresses and when they're dealing with NPAs. He points out that default in a company is not something that comes after stress. It's a lagging indicator. It's in the sense that stress already existed in the company, and that is why the company is defaulting. So banks, as institutions that lend to these companies and have an intention to recover their money from these companies, need to be more proactive, and they need to come up with ways to deal with this financial stress using a combination of leading indicators and renegotiation points. He says that you bring these points in, and only then can you adequately deal with default. Now, the reason why he's bringing this up is because in the guidelines there is a specific norm which states that banks need to spring into action the day after a company has defaulted on its loan. Many banks feel that this is probably too stringent. In fact, the Indian Banks Association has submitted a letter to the Reserve Bank as well as the government, asking for a 30-day rectification period within which the banks will figure out how to deal with this company and then spring into action. What the Reserve Bank feels is that you had your time to actually figure out the course of action. That was before default, and after default there is the need for you to actually stay true to your word and actually start something that will ensure that the default is corrected and the company comes back into repaying mode. Finally, he points out a set of risks that are inherent in the banking system. There has been this trend that most banks have been focusing only on the retail and the personal loan segment, so to grow their books and to have a higher retail portfolio. But the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank points out that you cannot treat retail lending as some kind of risk-free area which is a grand panacea for all your problems in the loan book. He says that unless you want the problems of the past, you have to ensure that the growth that comes in the next cycle is a measured growth, is something that is taken with conscious decision making and after thorough risk examination. Only then can you grow your loan book. Otherwise, you will end up with more stress in the coming years.